Abigail nodded, her resolve strengthening. She couldn't remain silent any longer. The truth had to come out, no matter the cost. The next day, Abigail decided to confide in Auntie a joke. After all, the elder woman had a reputation for wisdom and discernment. Together, they met in Ajoke's small but welcoming home, its walls adorned with old family photos and shelves lined with worn Bibles. Abigail poured out her heart, sharing everything: the dream, the warning from Prophet Elijah, and Pastor Emmanuel's increasingly controlling behavior. Ajoke listened intently, her face unreadable. When Abigail finished, the older woman sat in silence for a long moment, then let out a heavy sigh. "You are not alone in your struggle, child," Ajoke said finally. "Many women have come to me over the years, whispering their pain and confusion. Emmanuel is not the saint he pretends to be." Abigail's eyes widened. "You mean this has happened before?" Ajoke nodded gravely. "Oh, yes. But fear keeps many silent. They worry about their reputations, about how the congregation will judge them. And Emmanuel, he is a master manipulator. He knows how to twist the truth to his advantage." Abigail's mind raced. If others had suffered as she had, why hadn't they spoken up? Why hadn't anyone exposed him? "I cannot let this continue," she said, her voice firm. "We have to do something." Ajoke placed a hand on her arm. "Patience, my dear. The truth has a way of revealing itself. When the time is right, we will act. Until then, watch, listen, and prepare." That Sunday, Abigail couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was about to happen. The choir performed beautifully, their voices filling the church with an almost otherworldly energy. Sister Ruth, the choir mistress, stood beside Abigail, her posture perfect, her expression serene. Ruth was the embodiment of virtue, or so everyone believed. But Abigail's newfound awareness made her question everything. After the service, Abigail noticed Ruth lingering near Pastor Emmanuel. The two exchanged a glance that seemed loaded with unspoken words. Abigail's stomach turned. Could Ruth be another of his victims? Or was she complicit in his deceit? Her suspicions were confirmed later that evening when she overheard a hushed conversation between Ruth and Emmanuel in the dimly lit sanctuary. "Are you sure no one suspects?" Ruth whispered, her tone anxious. "No one will know unless you lose your composure," Emmanuel replied, his voice calm but commanding. Abigail's heart pounded as she crouched behind a pew, straining to hear. "What about Abigail?" Ruth asked. "She's been different lately." Emmanuel chuckled softly. "She's a child, easily swayed. I'll handle her." The words sent a chill down Abigail's spine. She backed away, quietly, her mind racing. Ruth wasn't just a victim. She was part of Emmanuel's web of lies. The next morning, Abigail sought out Auntie Ajoke again, her resolve hardened by what she had overheard. "I heard them," she said breathlessly. "Pastor Emmanuel and Sister Ruth. They're hiding something, and it's bigger than I thought." Ajoke nodded solemnly. "Then it's time to bring others into the fold. We cannot fight this battle alone." Together, they decided to gather a small group of trusted individuals, members of the congregation who had expressed doubts about Emmanuel's integrity. Among them were Elder Okonkwo, a no-nonsense deacon, Sister Monica, whose quiet faith had always been unwavering, and Brother Tunde, who had long harbored suspicions about the pastor. The group met in secret, sharing their stories and piecing together the evidence against Emmanuel. What emerged was a pattern of manipulation, deceit, and exploitation that stretched back years. But they knew that exposing him wouldn't be easy. Emmanuel was beloved by many, and his charisma had a way of silencing dissent. "We need undeniable proof," Okonkwo said, "something that will force even his staunchest supporters to see the truth." The group devised a plan to catch Emmanuel in the act. They decided to use Abigail's growing closeness to the pastor as bait, knowing that he trusted her enough to lower his guard. Abigail was terrified, but resolute. "If this is what it takes to bring him down, I'll do it," she said. Over the next few weeks, she played her role perfectly, continuing her private sessions with Emmanuel while secretly recording their conversations. She also kept a close eye on Ruth, hoping to uncover more about her involvement. The turning point came when Emmanuel invited Abigail to his private retreat, a secluded house on the outskirts of town that he claimed was for deep prayer and meditation. Abigail knew this was her chance. She agreed to go but informed the group beforehand. They planned to follow her and gather evidence of whatever transpired.
At the retreat, Emmanuel's mask began to slip. He spoke more openly, his words laced with insinuations that made Abigail's skin crawl. "You're special, Abigail," he said, his voice smooth as honey. "The Lord has great plans for you, but only if you fully submit to his will." As he spoke, he moved closer, his intentions becoming unmistakable. Abigail's heart raced, but she maintained her composure, discreetly activating the recording device hidden in her purse. Meanwhile, outside the retreat, Auntie Ajoke, Elder Okonkwo, and the others waited, ready to intervene if necessary. The moment of truth came when Emmanuel reached for Abigail, his tone shifting from spiritual to predatory. Abigail stood her ground, her voice steady. "Is this God's will, Pastor?" she asked, her words cutting through the tension like a knife. He froze, his expression shifting from confusion to anger. Before he could respond, the door burst open, and the group stormed in, cameras in hand. Emmanuel's face turned ashen as he realized he'd been caught. The once powerful pastor now looked small and vulnerable, his facade crumbling under the weight of the evidence against him. The silence in the retreat house was deafening as Pastor Emmanuel stared at the group, his usually confident demeanor replaced by shock and anger. Abigail stood frozen, her breath quick and shallow as she watched the man she once trusted try to regain his composure. "You dare invade my privacy," Emmanuel growled, his voice trembling with fury. "This is an abomination, a trap set by the devil to ruin a man of God." But Auntie Ajoke stepped forward, her gaze steady and unwavering. "No, Pastor Emmanuel, this is the truth coming to light. You have preyed on the faithful for too long, and God's justice will not be mocked." Elder Okonkwo held up his phone, still recording. "The congregation deserves to know who you really are. Your lies and deceit end today." Emmanuel's expression shifted, his anger giving way to desperation. He turned to Abigail. "Abigail, you of all people should understand. You know how much I've done for you." But Abigail didn't flinch. Her voice was calm but firm. "You didn't do it for me, Pastor. You did it for yourself, and I won't be part of your darkness anymore." As the confrontation unfolded, Sister Ruth appeared in the doorway, her face pale. She had followed the group to the retreat, unable to resist the pull of curiosity. "Ruth," Auntie Ajoke said sharply, "you've been part of this, haven't you?" The choir mistress faltered, her lips trembling as tears welled in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered. He promised me things, said I was special. I thought he loved me." Abigail's heart broke for Ruth. The woman who had seemed so untouchable was now just another victim of Emmanuel's manipulation. "You knew it was wrong," Elder Okonkwo said sternly. "Why didn't you speak up?" "I was afraid," Ruth cried, collapsing into a chair. "He said no one would believe me. That I'd ruin my reputation if I told anyone." The group exchanged grim looks. Ruth's story was all too familiar, a pattern of coercion and fear that Emmanuel had used to maintain control. The group left the retreat, with all the evidence they needed, the recorded conversations, the footage of Emmanuel's predatory behavior, and Ruth's tearful confession. They decided to confront the congregation at the next Sunday service. The plan was risky, but they knew that exposing Emmanuel publicly was the only way to ensure he couldn't manipulate his way out of the situation. Sunday morning dawned bright and clear, but a heavy tension hung in the air as the church filled with worshippers. Emmanuel stood at the pulpit, his voice booming. He delivered a sermon on forgiveness and the dangers of false accusations. In the middle of his sermon, Auntie a joke rose from her seat, followed by Abigail, Elder Okonkwo, and the rest of the group. Pastor Emmanuel, a joke called out, her voice firm and steady. The time has come for the truth to be revealed. Gasps rippled through the congregation as the group approached the front of the church. "What is the meaning of this?" Emmanuel demanded, his face pale. A joke turned to the crowd. 4 years. This man has deceived us, using his position to exploit and manipulate those who trusted him. Today, we bring you proof of his sins. She gestured to Elder Okonkwo, who played the recordings for the congregation. The sanctuary filled with the sound of Emmanuel's voice, his manipulative words now laid bare for all to hear. As the evidence played out, murmurs of disbelief and outrage spread through the crowd. When the recordings ended, the congregation erupted into chaos. Some people shouted in anger, demanding answers from Emmanuel, while others wept openly, their faith shaken to the core. Sister Monica stood and addressed the crowd. "This is not just about one man's sins. It's about protecting our community and ensuring that no one else falls victim to such deception." Emmanuel tried to regain control, raising his hands in a gesture of supplication. "Brothers and sisters, please, this is all a misunderstanding. These people are being used by the devil to destroy our church." But the congregation wasn't swayed. One by one, members of the church stood up to share their own experiences, revealing a pattern of abuse and manipulation that extended far beyond Abigail and Ruth. By the end of the service, the decision was unanimous. Emmanuel would be removed from his position, and an investigation would be launched into his actions. In the days that followed, the church struggled to heal. Emmanuel disappeared, his once flourishing ministry now in shambles. Abigail, Ruth, and the others worked tirelessly to rebuild the congregation's trust, focusing on transparency and accountability. They introduced new measures to ensure that no leader could abuse their power again.